Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Yes, TAD Talk. We're back. We had a week off. It was a busy week, but it's May the 11th, season 2, 30 episodes coming your way. And boy, do we have some amazing guests. And we are kicking it off in the biggest way. Today, taking a little move away from entertainers, but going with people who very much contribute to the entertainment scene. Very excited about this show. First of all, our guest who's here in Arizona with me, enjoying the sun, but not enjoying the quarantine so much. We've got a wonderful entertainment photographer. Welcome to the show, Shari Corbett. Shari, hi.
Hi, how are you, Terry?
I'm good. Are you in Phoenix?
I'm actually in Gilbert.
Gilbert, okay. Well, it's a little bit warmer down there than Anthony.
Yes.
We're about a degree and a half cooler than you.
Yeah.
Good having you on the show. And to kick off our season 2, wonderful guest that I'm very excited to hear about. When you talk about credentials in any industry, well, it'd be hard to reel off a bunch of credentials in the history and the career of Kent Gavin. Beatles, Rolling Stones, Jackson 5, the entire royal family, and just about the whole life of Princess Diana. Welcome to the show, Kent Gavin. How you doing, Kent?
Hi, Terry. Yeah, nice to join you.
Great having you on the show. This is going to be a great show. We've got so many cool things to talk about on both sides, and we're all going through this strange time in global history right now, and all adjusting to whatever the new normal is going to be, and that's really how TAD Talk started. So let's get right into the show. We're going to start it the same way we do every year, and that is asking random questions. I'm going to start with you, Shari. So are you ready for this?
Ready.
All right, Shari, here we go. If you had a time machine and could go backwards in time to one place, okay, where would you go?
Ooh. I would probably go to my uncle's ranch in California when I was about 6 years old.
Ooh, so that was maybe 18 years ago, 19 years ago? Is that right?
A little longer than that.
Where was the ranch?
In California.
Which part?
Yeah, Riverside, outside of Riverside.
Nice. So you spent time there as a kid, is that why?
Yes, where I learned to ride. Yes.
Excellent stuff. What about you, Kent? If you could go backwards in time to one part, what would it be?
Wow. I think I'd like to... That's the one for me. Probably I'd like to have been on the grassy knoll to see what really happened to President Kennedy.
Absolutely. So if you last year? Yeah. Episode 13 of last season, I was actually flipped around. Sam Kane was the host, and me and my family were the guests. And so we did this whole thing. And I for about 13 years of my life, I studied just about everything there was to do with the JFK assassination. So
brilliant, yeah.
We'll definitely have to chat about that after the show. Yeah, the whole Dealey Plaza thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. And I'd probably do exactly the same thing. I'd be sat on there with Zapruder saying, "Give me the camera, just let me get a little closer."
He didn't know what he had, did he, at that time?
Yeah, no kidding. All right, I'm going to start with you here, Kent, on this question. Everybody's got a pet peeve, things they don't like about other people or other things. Kent, what would be your pet peeve?
Well, do you know what my pet peeve? I mean, there are many going by right now, but it's really now with the isolation that's going on all over the world and watching video footage of people ignoring this dreadful disease, what's going on, and not taking it seriously. And I've just been watching the London Underground here again, where people just pouring all over each other. I mean, at the moment is what's getting me wild.
Yeah, I think that might be at the top of most people's list. It does drive me. It doesn't take much to have just a little care, but I'm with you on that one. What about you, Shari? Pet peeve?
Well, I'm with Kent. Ignorance, right? People people ignoring, warning signs or orders. Just people just being ignorant. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a pet peeve for sure.
Yeah, we're with you on that one. That's maybe an easy question these days. And the final one of the 3 questions, you're both right at the top of your game, and you're part of the photographic industry, and both of your work is incredible. But if you were not in photography, what other career do you think you would have chosen, or you would have liked to have chosen? This is for you, Shari.
Oh, I know. I'd be a marine biologist.
Marine biologist?
I was actually on that track before I became a photographer and a designer. Yes, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I do not do well on boats. I get seasick, horrible seasickness, and that's the only reason. Yeah, and that's kind of a prerequisite. But now there's, treatments and things of that nature that I could have probably propelled myself in that field. But yeah, I'd be a marine biologist.
Very interesting. Kent, what about you? What a career you've had, but what would you have done differently if there was something?
Mine's easy, which is what I really wanted to do when I left school, but my father took me out of it. I wanted to be a professional footballer and play for the Arsenal. I grew up just away from them, from the old Arsenal ground, and it was always an ambition. And it wasn't for the money in those days. They weren't earning £10 or £15 a week. It was just, I loved football, and that's what I really would have liked to have done.
Yeah, you spoiled it with Arsenal, mate. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you would say that from where you're part of the world you're from.
So for any Americans that are watching, in England, there's two things you ask: where you're from and who's your football team, and usually not in that order. And so Arsenal and Man United have had a massive rivalry, especially in the 90s and 2000s. Wenger, Ferguson, some good. So were you a good footballer?
I was pretty good. I had a trial for an amateur team, which would have led me on to a trial with the Arsenal. It was at Leighton. But as my father said to me, you're going to have 4 or 5 years at the best if you make it. And fortunately, he walked me down to Fleet Street and got me into as an apprenticeship with a photographic agency. And thank God he did.
Yeah, no kidding. That's an understatement of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, this is great. It's TAD Talk. It's season 2, episode 1, and we'd love to find out a little bit more. I want you to find out a little bit more about these two wonderful guests. We're gonna come here to Gilbert, Arizona. Now we know Shari at TAD. Shari's done so much photography for us, some incredible stuff. But I know certain there was life before TAD, life before Arizona in the photography world. So how did it all start for you, Shari?
High school.
Yeah.
High school, not yes. And I started messing around with the camera. We had a dark room at our school. We also, I also had friends that were into photography. One of my first jobs, actually, believe it or not, was Sears Portrait Studio over a Christmas holiday break to earn some money while I was still going to school. My good friend who I went to school with, in high school with, her sister was a manager. And that's kind of how I got started. And then I went to work for labs. I learned about processing, lived in a dark room, dodged and burned way before Photoshop existed. Worked for a group in Tucson, worked for a wonderful photographer, Lance Fairchild. He was really known for photographing presidents and celebrities. And he took me under his wing, and really the rest is pretty much history from there. I became a graphic artist. As you know, I'm also a graphic artist. I started that in about 2002. I went and got an art degree, things of that nature. And that has propelled me where I'm able to marry photography and design into one digital medium.
Yeah, I know your career at the beginning, I'm sure with Kent's too, you're dealing with, analog cameras, working in labs, developing film, all that kind of good stuff. But how did the transition from digital impact your career?
Oh, boy. That was hard. I kind of went kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because I was on that cusp. I'm 49 years old. So I was on that cusp of, I'm young enough to still learn computers and digital. But it was still kind of a struggle of how it all worked. I went kicking and screaming. But now, the only time that I in the last 10 years that I've taken my film cameras actually out of their container was to rewrap them and put them in storage. I mean, I haven't done anything with them since. They're packed away.
That's cool. We're looking at some still shots that you've taken of a bunch of shows, and you've got a great knack of capturing their onstage energy when you take a still shot when it's in the studio. I remember the ABBA shots that you took were pretty iconic.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. I mean, in your team, Terry, obviously, when you get ABBA into a studio, it's really not work. I mean, your team is incredible. We all have so much fun, whether it's December 63, ABBA Fab. It's not work coming to do stuff for you. They make it so much fun.
No, the team is excellent. Let's talk about Musically Fed, because I know it's something you're very passionate about and something I've been reading about this weekend, and it's a wonderful thing. Tell us about Musically Fed.
Musically Fed is a nonprofit that started here with a good friend of mine, Maria Brunner, who runs Insight Management. She put it together to take backstage catering from shows. As you know, I mean, some people may not know that when an artist comes to town, there are caterers that are enlisted in order to feed the crew, the artist, the local crew that come into play. All that food is packaged up and then delivered to charities that need it, or people who are food insecure. We focus mainly on veterans. But this last year, we went nationwide. We were at the Grammys this year. We were at CMA Fest last year. And now with everything that's happening in the entertainment world, as you know, a lot of people have lost their jobs or are on the verge of losing their jobs. Mm-hmm. So we've taken and mobilized our staff in order to help those local entertainers that are in need. So last month, we've been focused with Rhino Staging. And their headquarters is here, even though they have offices all over the nation. And we've been feeding about 30 to 40 families a week, along with Resurrection Ministry. And this is just a shout out for anybody who is in need, or you know of somebody who is in need. You can reach out to us at 480-951-1882, and we can get somebody to help you.
And we're going to get one of our team to put that phone number on our, and there it is already, the phone number's there. So dial that number, and also go to musicallyfed.org to find out more about it. I know that TED Management are going to get involved and do all of it, and it's a great way to, and what a great way to give back in your career, Shari. Got to feel good about that.
Indeed. I mean, there are a lot of people that I know that are being affected by this. I mean, and you know as well, and it trickles down. People don't understand when you bring in artists like, think of, Lady Antebellum or Billy Joel, you think of this huge stadium or huge arena act of how many people it actually takes from the person doing all the marketing behind the scenes before that show gets there, to the promoter, to the ticket.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people that actually move the tour and put the show together. It takes a village for sure.
Absolutely. No, it's great stuff, and great learning about your career too. And no doubt we'll see each other, because if ever we need pictures, we know where we're going.
You know it.
Good stuff. Hey, Ken, I have a question for you. All right. I asked this of Mick Miller. He came up with an answer like that. But who's the greatest footballer of all time?
We won't go to Manchester United. How far back do you want to go? What I've witnessed, I've watched, or friends with? I mean, probably George Best, who I was very friendly with, and Bobby Moore. But, you look at the modern day football now with Messi and Ronaldo. I mean, it's phenomenal to achieve. I mean, football's changed so much because there's no live sport, as you know, anywhere at the moment, especially here. They're running all the old stuff. And when you look at even when the Arsenal won the Invincibles and won the double, the pace of football was so slow now. And when you're witnessing what's going on now, it's amazing.
It's interesting, isn't it? And you do that, you see, and it doesn't take long. It only takes 5 or 10 years, and it's like the speed of the game is double.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the question I asked you about that, I think every single person I talked to and asked that question, everyone said Georgie.
Yeah. Well, he was a great friend of mine, George, and I spent a lot of time with him and tried to get him off the booze many, many times. I was involved in many altercations with him, from Miss Worlds to you name it. We won't go into it all now, but he just would not leave it alone. It was crazy. I mean, they called him the fifth Beatle, didn't they? He was a good-looking, just so talented, brilliant, but he just lost the plot.
I know. I mean, Georgie was my idol, obviously. Big United fan. My dad took me to the first game in '67, watched the European Cup final in '68 in black and white. And but that, talk about '68. 1968 was the first year you won the award as British Press Photographer of the Year. Is that correct?
It's correct. Yeah, the first time. Yeah.
That's great. And how many times have you won it? No, Kent.
I've won that 3 times. News Photographer of the Year twice, World's News Feature Photographer of the Year, and then into the Royals, of course. Once I got stuck with Diana, I was Royal Photographer of the Year 7 times, and Royal Photographer of the Decades for the 80s and 90s. That was 80%, of course, through the coverage of Diana.
Absolutely. And of course, we could probably spend 5 or 6 episodes just talking about that. Before we do, I want to ask you this. And we've got lots of people coming in asking questions on the show. One of them is, who was the very first celebrity that you can remember that you photographed?
Oh, God, that's going back in time. First celebrity. No, I don't really know. I suppose Joan Collins would have been probably one.
John Collins in the 60s?
Yeah, but John and I are great friends as well over the years. God, I don't really know. I mean, I during my trips over to the States, because one of the things that they gave me when I first won that trip, they gave me a contract which I could decide where I went and what I wanted to do. And I wanted to travel the world and choose my own assignments for 6 weeks. And of course, the big thing for me, I spent, Sherry will just let her know that, I spent so much time with show business people, which helped build up a great deal of confidence when I had to take the Royal Family Honours career.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say that. I think it would be Joan. And then Doris Day, of course, many times with Doris Day.
That's great. There's so many. Before we get into the royal stuff, there's so many. Do you have a favourite photograph? Because you've taken Beatles, Stones, Jackson 5. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But do you have a favourite single photograph you've taken?
It's so difficult because my career has been so varied, Terry, from royals to sport to news. I'm trying to knock it down at which one. I mean, the seal hunt was a picture that I'm very, very proud of because of what it achieved for the Save the Seal campaign and the dreadful clubbing of those animals out in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. And it was a very difficult job to undertake that. And what happened with that, Brian Davies, who was running the Canadian equivalent of the RSPSA, brought an 8mm amateur video film to London and showed it to Hugh Cudlip, who was then chairman of the Mirror Group newspapers. And during a split second in that amateur video, I saw that one picture and thought if I could capture that in one still, this is before automatic cameras, automatic focusing and motor drives.
Right.
I thought it would be a great deal. And I went out to cover that and I was very lucky. I risked my life for it. I went out with Brian. We flew around. He gave me the kit and took flares and everything else, told me how if you went through the ice, because seals break the ice to come up to get the pups. And we just have to prod away with sticks. And we flew around in a single-engine aeroplane on skis and used to try and land on the ice floes. But of course, by the time we got down, the hunters were away and gone. So I told him the only way to cover this was with helicopter. And he arranged for a helicopter to be put at our disposal. I nearly fell out of that because the door fell off as it was flying around. But fortunately, we could get down pretty quick. And on that, when you look at from the air all that red blood on the ice, he put down amongst about six patches of ice, and the hunter was so occupied with getting around all the sill pups that I was managed to get within about 3-4 feet, 3 or 4 yards from him, and recorded that image. And of course, the European Union stopped it, I think, for about 6 or 7 years. But I did go through the ice. I wrote off 2 cameras, and I had one leg in and one leg out. Brian Davies, I let the flare off. He came over and dragged me out the ice. And I got a bonus at the end of it. I've managed to get 10 days in New York, courtesy of the editor. When the images got back to London.
Well, talk about changing history. Certainly, like you say, for 6 or 7 years, it had a massive impact.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
It's incredible. And like I say, we could spend all day in it. But I know let's talk about Princess Diana, because obviously iconic worldwide, and you were there to capture it all.
I was, yeah.
How did it begin then?
Well, it was very strange because I just won British Press Photography for the 3rd time. The editor called me and the picture editor into his office and said, "We've got a rumour running around that the Prince of Wales is dating a young girl down in Chelsea, and I want you to go and have a look at it and see what you can make it." Well, I thought it was a bit below my pay grade in those days to go and stand on a pavement and photograph somebody coming out and getting into a car. But little did I know, from that day, right until the sad death in 1997, I was going to spend the next 18 years with her and chronicle history, the good, the bad, the sad, and the ugly side of it all. And it was just a career that I could never thought would be achieved. I became a good friend of her. She chose me to do the christening pictures, or her and Charles, that is, to do the christening pictures of Prince William. And some of the stories, I can tell you a few stories. Let me just tell you 1 or 2 anecdotes with her.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, if you've got a couple.
When she visited Egypt for the tour around the pyramids and also down to the Valley of the Kings, she did not want to stand in front of the pyramids. She thought it was a bit cheesy, and a Royal Protection Officer, Ken Wolf, said to me, "She's not going to do it, Ken. She won't do it. You just have to do it as she walks around." I said, "Can I approach her?" And he said, "You're going to go and talk to her." So I went over and I said, "Ma'am, we really do. This one picture will sum up your visit to Egypt." And I said, "If you can look behind you, there's one of the wonders of the world there with the pyramids. And I think you're the next one. I think we need that picture." And she looked at me and said, "I can't refuse that." And that picture was taken of her standing between the 2 pyramids.
That's brilliant. Wow, what a story.
And there are other stories. I flew back when she visited New York. The editor got in touch with me and said to leave the Rat Pack, as we were then called the Royal Rat Pack. We booked you a flight on Concorde when Diana's returning to London. And we want you to get there and check in and talk to her on the flight back from New York. If you can recall, I don't know how people can recall back in that time, but she'd just broken all the mould on AIDS, where she picked up the young children, held their hands, totally broke everything that was going on. And that day, neither President Reagan or Nancy got anywhere near it. And of course, I wanted to talk to her. And as you know, New York to London in those days was 3.5 hours. And she was sitting in 1A with a Royal Protection Officer. And on the other side, 2A and 2B was the press officer and a lady in waiting. So I couldn't really get to her for a little while. And the champagne flowed very freely, as you can imagine. So about 45 minutes in, I nearly slipped down a bottle of free champagne, and she sent the lady in waiting down to me and said, "Will you swap seats? She wants to have a chat to you." So we had a chat on the way back, and I tried to explain to her what had gone on. She had no idea the impact those pictures were going to take with her, and it was amazing. And the christening pictures, of course, when I was chosen to do that, I was given the script, a running order. The Queen had done similar things before. They came in, they did that and the other, and Michael O'Shea said to me, "Whatever you do not approach the Queen, do not print. I know you're friendly with Diana, do not speak to them. They would go through the system." Well, I went all through that, and William was crying all the way through that christening, and she put her little finger in his mouth and stopped him crying and came over to me and said, "Ken, have you got enough? Is that fine?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, that's fine." Well, then I looked at it. There was a picture missing. It was the Queen Mother's birthday on that day. And the picture was missing. We didn't have the young and the old in one picture. So there was another guy, Ron Bell, who was with me, a press associate. So he said, well, I'm not going over to him. So me being the cheeky cockney, I went over to the Queen, who was standing to one side, and I said, excuse me, ma'am, but we do need a picture which is not on the list, which I'd already broken the rules by not keeping quiet. And she said, goodness me, this was her quote, how have we missed that, Michael? Mother, and the Queen Mother came out, put down her gin and tonic, what she was drinking, came over and grabbed over William, and that one picture went into a set that won me one of the Royal Photographer of the Year. They're only human, remember, Terry. They're only human. I got on very well by now.
I know they are, but it's kind of like, you know, my wife and I once met Dick Clark, who over here was an icon, and we only spoke to him for about an hour in a setting, but the stories were incredible. And it's like this now. They are only human. However, they're humans that we've seen from afar, and there's
exactly.
You know,
which brings me to my next subject. Before Diana came on the scene, and of course Fergie, who really upset the apple cart, as we know, the media coverage of the royal family was really stuck in Victorian age, as far as early days of television and also the tabloids. And it was only when this beautiful 18-year-old woman came on the scene that the frenzy started. It broke all the mold. Everybody was interested. They were interested in what she was wearing, what her hairstyles were. Everything was amazing. Terry, let me tell you another story. We're talking about history.
I love it.
It's not about Diana, it's about the Queen.
Okay.
With all the big royal photo calls, there's a pool situation. Because everybody wants to do it, one person gets chosen, and you represent the group, and all the newspapers and the big wire service get access free of charge to those pictures. But I had a royal rota at St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, and to talk about history and things that you would never believe you were going to hear or witness. It was pouring with rain, and the Queen was running late. So the Dean of Windsor came out and said, would you like to come in and have coffee, Mr. Gavin? I said, yes, thank you very much. So I went in there, sat down, put the cameras down, and there was this big table there, the coffee was sitting, and he said to me, are you interested in the history of the royals? I said, yeah, I'm fascinated by it. He said, well, see this table that we're having the coffee on? He said, this is where they laid the headless body of Charles I after his execution. Oh, God, he's joking. He said, no, this is the exact table which is on it. And he said, were you interested in Henry VIII? I said, well, isn't everybody? He said, well, look at these big, he brought out these big, massive, books, folders. He said, do you know where he's buried? I said, he's in St George's Chapel, down the middle, as you saw where the wings are in. He's buried under there in one of the steps, stones that there. You walk across his stone. And he said, look at this. Anyway, years and years ago, it fell in. And he was showing me the diagrams of the people that repaired it and where the body was. And everything else, all in these big volumes. And I thought, no normal person could ever get and see or witness this sort of thing. You could only do it by being part of that royal setup.
Wow. These stories. Sherry, have you spent much time in London?
I've never been.
Have you not?
I have not. I would love to go, though.
You know, it's really interesting. So, of course, I was born in the UK and then came over here, became an American citizen, live here now. So I've kind of got both sides of this fence. And Ken asked me at the beginning if I was a royalist. And, you know, I feel very positively about them. I don't know if that makes me a royalist or not, but certainly very interested, always hearing stories. I thought that, I personally thought that the latest two public announcements that the Queen made were fantastic. That's what I thought. Just wonderful messages. And when you think of Sherry, when you're from the UK, the royal family, which is obviously has been for centuries, it's just something that's always there. And it's not something we have here. And it's very, very hard to explain to anybody exactly what it's like. I know watching the Queen, there was I think I watched it on YouTube or maybe on Netflix or something. It's a 2-hour special on the Queen's life from when when she became the Queen all through. And boy, what a life that's been.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
crazy. How is Charles?
Charlie, well, I mean, he had to get over that marriage that he had with Diana. I mean, I never thought he was going to pull it round with Camilla, but he did. I have a great deal of admiration for Charles. Because of my affiliation and friendship with Diana, I never thought that it was going to work with Camilla, but it has worked, and they're very happy together. I can remember on the chat back coming back from Pakistan with Diana, with some of those pictures you got there, where she's cuddling all those little cancer kids, and she asked to have a chat to me, and we went down to the galley, and we had drinks there, and standing around there having a chat, and that's when she told me that she still loved him. This was prior to all the later stuff that was to come out. But it simply wasn't going to work, and I think that we hit a lot of bad turbulence at that time, and we all had to reach. She was on the 747 upstairs, and we were downstairs, so I didn't get a chance to talk to her further about that. But it's different. I can tell you another story. I spent 2 weeks in Africa with Princess Anne, and she's patron of Save the Children, and she is. I will say this: she is and still is the hardest working member of the royal family. But I had a one-to-one interview with her for the Mirror for the Save the Children, and the list of questions had to be put to her before she agreed to do it. And I went along with our top feature writer, Anton Antonovich, and I said, when this comes to the end, so she don't walk out, slip this one in. And I said, ask her why in 2 weeks she never picked up one child, which would have given much more publicity to this trip than what we'd got. So right at the end of it, he said, thank you, ma'am. He said, I'd just like to ask one more question. Now, this is not on the list of questions. Can you tell me why you never picked up another child? And she looked straight down the lens at my lens and said, you asked him to say that, didn't you? I'm not like your friend, and I don't do that. I don't have to do that. And she got up and walked out. I thought, well, we got the answer. I mean,
yeah,
there were two, but I have a lot of admiration for her. She would not stop, absolutely non-stop.
That's crazy. Obviously, I mean, with so much, we got one episode. I'd love to invite you back sometime because we got Beatles, we got Stones, we've got.
I have so many showbiz stories for you.
It's fantastic. No, it's amazing too. What a great thing. We're going to move on to the section of the show that's called "Where in the World is Terry?"
Where in the world is Terry? Where in the world is Terry?
So many stories. This is a great episode. This is where we changed my virtual background. I can put myself anywhere. Quite often, I like to think I'm in New York, so I'll just put myself there, and that's where I'll be. So thanks to the wonders of Zoom. So this one's very simple. I'm just going to change my background, and you got to tell me where I am, making it very easy. Well, kind of very easy today. And I'm going to you first, Shari, okay?
Okay.
Shari, I want you to tell me where I am.
That looks like Hawaii.
God, that was too easy.
I'm going to say Oahu.
That's too easy. You nailed it. So I'm not going to settle for that. I'm going to give you.
But you just done a laws from there, so that was pretty easy. That looks like Is that for me or for Kent?
That is for you, Shari, because Hawaii was too easy.
Oh my goodness. That looks like Denver, Colorado.
You're good. That's really good. All right, I've got a couple for Kent here. Let me find this. Well, first of all, Kent, this is not really one of the questions, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Where am I?
That looks like Old Trafford, sadly.
I just wanted to get an Arsenal fan to say Old Trafford, that's all.
I spent many times there, I can tell you.
Right, here's one of them. Where am I?
You got me there. I can't make that out.
So if you look if you look at the spire on the, I think it's on the right. Look at the very top.
Well, it's not New York, is it? No, that's not. No, I can't say. You got me there.
Okay, it's the liver birds on top of that building. Liverpool.
The Beatles. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, I would that. You know, I've been there a few times, but I'll try to get out there as quick as I get in there. Football.
I'm married to a Scouser.
Yeah, I bet.
All my in-laws are Scousers, and they're nearly all Liverpool fans. So
yeah, they're great crowd of people.
No, they're brilliant people. Scousers are just absolutely brilliant. But until we talk about football, then it's not good.
All right. Question.
This is an easy one, Ken. Where am I?
Well, that looks like Dallas.
It is Dealey Plaza.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant stuff. And I'm back here. Oh, no, I'm back here. There you go. That's Where in the World is Terry. Brilliant stuff. We've got lots of people watching, and then season 2 carries on, like I said, 30 episodes with some amazing guests over the next 5 weeks. So don't forget to tune in every day at 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern, and 7 p.m. in the UK. We're going to move to the part of the show with a question I always like to ask. And the question is this for Shari and Kent. If you could spend the next 60 minutes with 2 people, dead or alive, anywhere in the world, who would you like to spend the next hour with? Where would you go? What would you talk about?
Cool.
Yeah, I love this question. I ask everybody. We got some amazing answers, and I'm going to start with Shari only because Kent just went, oh. So Shari, go ahead. 2 people.
Well, the first one would be my mom. You know, she passed in 98. So I would probably go to my last childhood home that we lived in together. Yeah. And I would probably ask her more about her childhood. Okay. I've started diving into my genealogy and things of that nature. So I would probably probe her questions. Second person, I'm a huge Marilyn Monroe fan, so I would probably have to say Marilyn Monroe. Go back in time to old Hollywood, and ask her about her life and any advice. You know, maybe get some makeup tips. Yeah, those are probably the 2
stories. Wow. What about you, Kent? 2 people, 1 place, anywhere in the world.
Well, first, I guess the first one would be I'd like to get back in time with my parents and to talk to them much more detail about life, especially when I was a kid just after the war. And because I spent so much time building a career, I tended rather to neglect my younger days and also with my kids. So I'd like to really, if I have a great opportunity to go back in time and sit with both of them and let them know how well I've got on and everything else.
Absolutely.
And of course, I'd like to sit at the Ritz Hotel with Diana, Princess of Wales, and talk to her about not getting into that dreadful Mercedes before she left. Beryl C.
If only, eh?
If only.
Yeah, if only. My gosh.
I should get that. Put this on your screen there.
Yeah, well, there it is. Incredible photographs that all of us have seen.
Yeah,
captured a terrible moment, but captured a very important moment.
Absolutely.
Amazing stuff.
I don't know if you've got enough time for this, just to give you a little insight to showbiz, because it is rather amusing. Yeah. And then on a serious note with Prince Andrew, as he's been in the news over there with you quite a lot. Well, over here too. But firstly, with I spent, as I say, a lot of time in California, and I went to a party with George Best, and sadly I had too much to drink, and spent the night in Beverly Hills police station, which was a sight I should never forget, as I was sitting in there in a white suit with a lot of other gentlemen. But that's another story. But on that following, I had an appointment with Evel Knievel and Gene Kelly. And it was an arrangement for an interview and pictures, and they were making this movie. And I was late because I had to go get a court case. And when I arrived up there, Gene Kelly said to me, "Well, why are you late?" I took a chat, and I had to explain to him what it was. And he said to me, "Well," he said, "let's drink driving. You might get no problem over here. You'll be going back to the UK." He said, "You heard about Bert, haven't you?" And I said, "Bert." He said, "Bert Lancaster." I said, "No, what about him?" He said, "Oh, he got picked up on the coming back from Malibu on the highway, and he refused to take the breathalyzer, so they slammed him, banged him up." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, he was dressed in a tutu." And I said, "He'd been to a fancy dress party," and I thought, I can't believe this. He's given me a story, and of course, I had to check it when I got back with the LA Times. I mean, it was true. I mean, wow. just things happen in this. It's amazing. And then another one with Andrew, that dreadful time. I didn't send you that picture, but there are so many. This is on my website. I flew with Prince Andrew once the airspace opened up with him to go to Ground Zero in New York. And it was one of the times where I knew Andrew quite well because he had presented me with Royal Prizes. And when we got there, it was again on a photo call phase, and there were 6 of us. And somebody had to be chosen to go up, and one of the buildings that were next, the Ground Zero was still burning, even though it was a week later. And nobody would get, we were told that the lifts were shaky and this, that, and the other. And I had to go in this lift, banged up in the lift with him, Royal check and the press officer. And we got to, it was a real shaky old lift right to the top. And I had to try and illustrate, and Sherry will understand this, to tell the story in one picture. And he said to me, "What do you want?" Andrew is quite a good amateur photographer himself. And I said to him, "Well, I'm afraid I need you to do this, that, and the other because of the focal length." And I asked him to lean over the balcony on top of this building to look down at Ground Zero. And it was something I shall never, ever forget in my photographic career. It was one of the better points with him at that time.
Well, I'm actually looking at the photograph.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, never forget it, never. And the actual pictures that he pointed out, he said, "You do this, do that." I was already doing it, but it was, of course, we know what's happened to him since, but that's another story.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm talking to Forrest Gump. Kind of in all the places. I know before we move to the close of the show, Shari's got a story about this. I think it's a Crosby, Stills and Nash warm up.
Oh my goodness! Yes, I spent, as you know, Terry, I spent time working for Denny Zalesko, a local promoter here. And I did pretty much all of his ad layups, and I also photographed his shows. And there was a show here at Crosby, Stills and Nash. I believe it was at Symphony Hall. And I'm sure you've probably been downstage, under the stage of Symphony Hall, right? All the caverns. And I just remember walking to the green room or coming back from dinner from the green room and walking into the hallway, and Crosby, Stills and Nash had their dressing room door open, and they were warming up a cappella, and it was echoing down the hall. You could hear it, and it was goosebumps. Yeah, it was one of those pinch me moments. If I would have only known, yeah.
If you'd have only had an iPhone 7 then and pressed record.
Pretty much. I mean, I did cover the show afterward. I mean, the show on stage, but not. And it would have been intrusive for me, obviously, to go in and try to capture that. I would have never invaded their privacy in that manner. But that's one of those moments that lives in my heart and my head, right? Oh. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite photograph you've taken?
That's hard. My photo of Willie Nelson is, I've won a couple of awards for that photo. It's black and white. That was shot at Celebrity Theater, as you know. I mean, you're familiar with Celebrity Theater.
Yeah, I know it's good.
Yep, I was their house photographer for a long time. That, and I actually have, and I don't think I sent the photo to you, but it's a photo of Slash, believe it or not. And I'm literally standing almost underneath him, and I'll never forget, it's actually shot between his pit guard and his arm, and I'm shooting upwards to his face. And he was dripping sweat all over me, and sweat got on my lens, it got on my body. It was kind of one of those things of, no one's going to believe how I had to capture this photograph because I was that close to him with this huge lens. So yeah, that's probably just because it invokes such a memory and a feeling. I don't know if it's technically brilliant, but memorable. Yeah.
Well, my daughter-in-law to be, Julia, who I think you know, is the most insane, ridiculous Slash fan. So she may just want to hug you just to get some of the sweat droplets.
My gear needed a good cleaning afterwards, for sure. Yeah.
Well, before we finish, I've got one quick question for both of you. Is there anybody around these days that's still around that you haven't photographed that you'd like to? Is there anybody out there you thought, you know what, I'd just like to get in the studio or in a place and film? What about you, Kent? Let's start with you.
I don't know. I guess it would still be, for me, it would still be the royal family. I think I'd like to have a nice one-to-one session with, because of the way back with William and the Christian, I'd like it with Kate and William and the kids. Yeah, that would be, the access to that would be great. Yeah, I would love to do that.
What about you, Shari?
I go right to music. That's so hard. I'm tossed between what's current and now. So like bands like Shinedown, a lot of people know what a huge Shinedown fan I am. I have a custom piece of art that says "Fly" from the inside that I have hanging on my wall. They're entertaining and they're fun and they're easy going guys from the South. So I really like them. That would probably be on the top of my list. But I also think about iconic bands. It would be great to go back in time and photograph Led Zeppelin, right? I mean, I think about if that was even possible, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I have my wish for the photograph I'd like to see both of you take. So, Shari, I'd like to see you take a photograph as soon as possible of all our performers and bands back out there gigging and working. That's what I'd like to see as soon as possible. And for you, Kent, the photograph I'd love you to take is a photograph of Harry Maguire lifting the Premiership title next year. Yeah.
Don't worry about that one when it happens.
Yeah. But thank you both for being on the show. This has been a tremendous show. Such great stories. And it's been a blast. It's been a blast. This brings us towards the end of season 2. It's been great. Thanks to Ross Caligieri, our producer, for putting all this together. We've got some new overlays, as you can see, and we've got some great guests coming up all week. On Wednesday, I'm very excited to have Vijay Amritraj as my guest. And all through the season, some great guests. So please join in. Thanks to Shari and thanks to Ken for being our guest today. You guys take care of yourself. Stay safe. Wash your hands. We'll see you tomorrow for episode 2 of season 2.
Thanks, Shari.
Thank you. Bye-bye.